From being the greatest entertainers in their eras, to also being at the center of controversy and drama, Mike Tyson and Conor McGregor have a lot more in common than most people would assume. And after meeting each other on multiple occasions, Tyson has finally revealed what he really thinks about the UFC icon. Now, the boxing legend doesn't hold back when it comes to his opinions on other fighters. And even though sometimes he can perhaps criticize the people too much, he's rarely ever wrong. After all, the dude knows what he's talking about and realizes what it takes to be the very best. So when he started talking about the Notorious on a recent episode of his podcast, Hot Boxin' with Mike Tyson, everyone listened. Of course, we all know that Tyson and McGregor aren't on bad terms. As a matter of fact, Iron Mike has been in attendance for a number of Conor's title bouts. It's just that, with the way his stock has dropped recently, most people were expecting the American to dissect the Irishman's recent losses and rip him apart. But to everyone's surprise, he was actually super positive about McGregor. As a matter of fact, he went ahead and said the UFC star was beautiful in real life. According to him, this flashy and controversial side of Conor isn't actually real, and it's just a gimmick that he uses to gain popularity. Of course, that may seem like a negative comment since people don't generally like people who live double lives like that. Though, at the end of the day, he's an entertainer, kinda like a WWE wrestler, right? Like, sure, you could criticize him all day you want about his fighting ability and all that. What you can't take away from him, however, is the fact that he's still really good at being a showman. And that's exactly why Mike admires him so much. For him, boxing and UFC are very different in terms of their overall approach. He said that he doesn't consider boxing to be entertainment because, at the end of the day, it's all about the fight itself. UFC, on the other hand, is more about the spectacle and the theater of it all. I mean, he's got a point. When you're watching a boxing event, the fighters are obviously entertaining the crowd with their skills. But once that's over and there is an intermission, there's nothing else going on really. Well, unless you're at one of these new age influencer boxing events. The UFC, however, explodes with its party atmosphere during intermissions. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't be wrong if I said that some people just show up to these MMA events just to party. And according to Mike, this is exactly why the UFC is more advanced than boxing. Like, sure, boxers may get paid more as individuals. When it comes to the overall value of the sport, though, he thinks the UFC is miles ahead and is worth billions. Now, this is also why McGregor's so good at what he does. Like, he's just the perfect star for the UFC and knows how to get the crowd riled up with his antics. In fact, Tyson thinks that McGregor is successful because of his gimmick. He went on to talk about how you need to have a gimmick in order to succeed in the UFC. Interestingly, he was talking to Mark Calloway, aka The Undertaker, on his podcast, and even credited the WWE star for drawing in huge crowds through his gimmick over the years. As a matter of fact, Mike went as far as to admit that he took a lot of inspiration from pro wrestling and The Undertaker to shape his own persona. Calloway then responded by saying that Tyson had a pretty scary persona in his own right. Though, funnily enough, the podcast's co-host Sebastian Joseph Day added that he wasn't quite sure if it was Mike's persona or the real thing. Regardless, the fact remains that you've gotta have a shtick to really succeed in this business. Which is why the boxing legend said that the only people who have all the money also have a successful gimmick. He's not wrong, is he? Plus, for him, Conor's the perfect blend of crazy and bold to excel at what he does. Now, of course, he still thinks it's all for show, and McGregor's a really nice guy in real life. I mean, I, for one, am inclined to take his word for it, because he's met the guy multiple times and knows what he's talking about. With that said, it is still kinda hard to believe that Conor's a beautiful guy due to the number of controversies he's been involved in over the years. Like all the times he's gotten in trouble with the law. Take the build-up to his fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov, for example. Sure, he was really good at trash talking and riled people up a lot, but the time he decided to continue his aggression and antics, outside the arena? Well, that was just a step too far. Khabib was leaving the Barclays Center in New York along with some other MMA fighters in the parking lot. Right before their bus could exit the parking lot, however, McGregor showed up with a metal trolley and proceeded to shatter the bus's windows with it. Honestly, it looked like something straight out of old school WWF Attitude Era. Except that stuff was pre-planned, and this was very much real. In fact, it actually injured two MMA fighters on the bus, Ray Borg and Michael Chiesa. And of course, an arrest warrant was issued after the Irishman, who then had to do 5 days of community service. I mean, the list just goes on. He's fought people in bars, almost got into a brawl with the rapper MGK, and has even been accused of being racist and transphobic. Oh, and it's not like he's changed recently either. For instance, he's been all over the news lately for allegedly taking steroids to bulk up and avoiding USADA testing. Plus, he's also apparently getting fighters kicked off the Ultimate Fighter roster to make way for 3 of his guys to be on the show. Like, at what point does the gimmick actually turn into reality? Where even is the nice guy in him? Though, if there's anyone who can see the good in him, it's Mike Tyson. After all, he's had his own fair share of controversies over the years. Yeah, as controversial as Conor's been over the years, his past is nowhere near as dark as Iron Mike's. Seriously, the dude has literally spent 3 years in prison for allegedly someone. As a matter of fact, during his time in jail, he actually got a prison official pregnant and admitted it afterward as well. Not to mention the time he was addicted to drugs, or the time when he just straight up punched a man repeatedly on a plane. Yeah, it's not pretty, which is perhaps why he can draw some parallels to McGregor. I mean, they're not too dissimilar in the fact that they both have a dedicated fan base despite being incredibly controversial. But, of course, while Mike's well and truly retired and doesn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, McGregor's still got a lot of work to do in the octagon. In fact, 2023 could prove to be the most crucial year of his career, because not only is he going to be making an appearance on The Ultimate Fighter as a coach, but he's also ready to fight his counterpart on the show, Michael Chandler. Make no mistake, this is a make-or-break moment for Conor's career, after that horrible injury and loss against Poirier. And if he does manage to beat Chandler, he could very well be back in the conversation for a title bout later down the line. On that note, this was all for Mike Tyson's opinion on McGregor, and why he's such a good entertainer.